Hi, managers. Hopefully, you've had a chance to already go through the video that helps you understand the LDJC tool. I'm going to try and keep this video much shorter and quicker. When you go to your regular LDJC tab, you will see your team members' LDJC links on the right hand side. Note that you won't be able to see these links until your team member has already begun filling out their LDJC form. And so these might be blank when you first go there until they start actually filling out the form. When you click on a team member's link, you will notice that you will now be able to read each of your team members' filled out LDJC forms. But one of the new features that we've added this year is just guiding questions for our managers based on feedback that we received in the past. So in the past, we basically saw a lot of managers going to each of the questions and then in the conversation asking their team member to reflect on the same question. For example, if my team member has already filled out his response to what is your evolving understanding of your commitment to educational equity, the assumption is that as a manager, I've already read his response to this question as pre-work. And so what this new section or help text is going to help you do now is it gives you some ideas or guiding questions that you may ask during the conversation to make the conversation more effective, right? So for this particular question, you have three possible guiding questions based on what the team member might have filled out. What excites you most about your work? When do you really just feel like you're at your best? Given everything that you've shared, what are the skills, knowledge, or mindsets that you think will allow you to continue on this journey? Right? So the idea for you as a manager is not to repeat the same questions that the team member has already reflected on, but to be able to build on those to think about what does it mean for that team member moving forward, right? So for each of the sections, you will notice that there is some help text for you as a manager, which is a thing for you to keep in mind. So over here, we want you to keep in mind that it's critical for you to be detailed, to make sure that you're putting in all the evidence and being clear and specific. In the conversation where we want you, in the question where your team members pulled everything together, we think this is a great place for you to synthesize, to really think about, push the team member to think about where they believe their impact has been the greatest, and how they're thinking of deepening their impact over time. So my strong recommendation is to use this help text, go through it in advance of the conversation so that you're well prepared and know what you're looking for. And also, very importantly, please read your team members' reflections in advance to make sure that you're not actually repeating the same questions to which they've already put in responses. Yeah, I'm just going to pause at this section, which is the peer feedback. Two things. One is, before the conversation, I would strongly urge you to have a conversation with your team member in your next check-in to help them arrive at who those three people are who they're going to get feedback from. Keep in mind that it's important to make sure that the three people they choose give both you as well as them a holistic understanding of what their overall contribution and performance has looked like, right? So again, depending on their role, try not to pick three people who've seen them in the same setting, but really three people who've seen them in different settings, or three people who've worked with them on different types of projects. If that person is a manager, you might want to have them pick a peer pick someone who they currently manage, and then a third person or who you could both decide and figure out together, right? But the idea is really not to pick everyone who's going to give good feedback or everyone who's going to give really strict feedback, but to anchor the choice in just the different settings in which a person might have worked. When you actually facilitate this section in the conversation, the three questions we've pushed you to think about as a manager is to help them really pull out their dominant strengths, to help them understand how people are perceiving them and how that might be similar to or different from their own perception, as well as just things that they might want to shift based on the overall feedback that they're receiving. Right? So, really, really important to keep that piece in mind as well. Next, I'm going to stop on at the manager feedback tab. So, this is a tab that always existed in the form of support, but it wasn't really explicit that it was an opportunity for you to do two-way feedback with your team member, right? So, this is feedback that they would have given you. Again, the idea over here is for you to take that feedback, but then also look at it within the context of this team member. So, if, for example, I was doing this conversation with Jimit, I would think about the feedback that Jimit has given me in terms of things he believes are my strengths, as well as things he believes are my growth areas. And I would think about how that's impacting my ability to best support him in his growth and development journey. And so the idea is to root it or anchor it in yourself, but to think about its impact on the other person's journey. So just keep that piece in mind as you fill out this section and facilitate this section. And then the second part is just your ability to give your team member feedback. Again, I would try and be as holistic as possible when you're picking strengths and AODs. And then I would try and be as specific as possible as you think about the overall synthesis section. Yeah. I'm now going to stop off at the last tab, which is your overall synthesis tab. Now, I know that people have varied degrees of comfort with facilitating LDJCs, and so my hope is that the help text in each of the previous tabs will help you just, be more comfortable with having that conversation without worrying about, like, was that the right question to ask? Is this the right way to go about it? But this last tab is really critical because here's where you're pulling together the entire conversation, right? And so in this tab, I think one thing to keep in mind is the overall summary of the ratings. Now, the idea over here is not to go into each of these ratings and say, why do you think your average peer rating is X? And why do you think your manager rating is Y? And why do you think your self rating is Z? Rather, the idea is to say, as you look at a summary of all of your ratings, what are you beginning to think or believe about your own contribution to this work? How is that making you feel about what you would like to prioritize in the months to come? And what could that look like in terms of the kind of support that you would need, or the spaces of inspiration that you would need to be able to be exposed to, and the kind of learning that you would need to prioritize or focus on, right? So again, the idea is not to get into the nitty-gritty of why, but to be able to use that to zoom out and arrive at a holistic understanding. The next part of this section focuses on the overall rating itself. And it's highly recommended that both your team member as well as you fill out this rating at the end of the actual conversation. There are, of course, guidelines on how you might decide to give a rating, what the ratings might look like. Pretty clear instructions over here. Feel free to read through them. If you have additional questions about, how to arrive at the rating, feel free to reach out to your own HR representative or thought partner with your manager or your skip manager to help you um, arrive at and understand what that rating might look like. I found it really useful to have a quick discussion with my manager before even going into a conversation with my team member. Just a thought partner on why I'm thinking of giving someone the rating that I am, so that I'm able to go into the conversation well prepared. And I found that to be very useful in the past. So I do think it's a good idea to go in having thought partnered with your manager or your HR representatives, so that you're not going into the conversation and then getting shocked by what your team member feels vis-a-vis what you feel, or that you're going in not feeling like you have enough evidence or clarity on why you want to give a certain rating, even though you're quite sure you want to give that rating. And then the last section is the actual LDJC synthesis and next steps. This is what your team member needs to fill out post the conversation before he or she submits it to the HR team for final review. So again, really important that through the conversation, one of you is taking notes, putting on that's synthesizing the conversation as well as putting in next steps. You could figure out who that should be. I usually prefer if my team member does it because it helps an individual synthesize their own understanding of the conversation, but it's really up to you. And then the last bit over here is the section that is only visible to you. So here you're going to pick two things. One is this person a retention risk? So do you see this person wanting to exit, quit, transition out within the next 6 months? You'll put a yes, no, unsure, and then you'll put any additional evidence that you have on why this might be. And then also, does this person have potential to make any sort of a lateral, vertical, diagonal shift within the organization? So, do you think there's potential for this person to engage in some sort of role change? And again, it would be really helpful if you can put down specific details here. So what is the role you're thinking of? Or do you think it's the team member who wants to make that shift? Or do you think that they ought to make that shift? And so just any notes over here. You might also say that I don't think this person should make a shift now or in the next 6 months. So for the next year, but maybe 1.5 years from now. I think even that would be good information for us to have so that we can start to think a little bit more about succession planning and progression planning as an organization. So any comments that you can put in here would be hugely helpful as well. Yeah. So quickly to summarize and recap, I think important to start off really broad and end really broad. Don't forget to use the manager help text to help you facilitate the conversation better. Don't forget to have a conversation with your team member in advance of your LDJC to help them identify the 3 people who they should or could get feedback from to make sure it's holistic. Don't forget you're not only giving feedback, but also getting feedback from your team member. And so you want to spend some time in advance of the conversation thinking about how you're going to make this section meaningful for both of you to be able to move forward effectively. And then finally, don't forget to make sure that you're going in with some sort of clarity on why you might give the team member the rating that you will, that you're referring to the guidelines for the rating, and ideally having some sort of a conversation with your own manager or skip manager to help synthesize your understanding of why you would give the rating you would. And then finally, don't forget about the section that's only visible to you, where you'll have a chance to give retention risk as well as overall IJP potential. Good luck, guys.